Hello everyone, welcome to Prediction Market Analysis episode number 2, a deep dive. Before we jump into this deep dive, I want to remind everyone that this is not financial advice. This analysis is for educational purposes only, and if you do this, you are probably in way over your head and you're in the clouds over here. Do not be in the clouds over here. You just want to only watch this for educational purposes only. You want to analyze and make up your own mind to do your own deep dive and figure out what you want to do. But from my perspective, this is for only analysis and nothing else. And with that, let us begin. So what did we learn in the last video? We learned about that there is an event trigger. Not to worry if you are just first time watching this. We learned about event trigger, and then we realized there is a core analysis framework for every event. There is a temporal boundary, when, spatial boundary, where, data source, what data, calculation methods, how, a threshold of significance level, and a resolution number timing. What are we even talking about? We are talking about prediction markets such as Kalshi, or if we go really diverse, there is another prediction market. What is it? What is it? Yes, it is Polymarket. There's other markets out there too, but then there is Polymarket as well. So these are the market. So how these resolve is you either vote yes or no. You can buy votes, you can sell votes, you can do a lot of things, but there's a lot of type of questions over here. Questions such as, will Trump pardon Diddy by Friday? Monad airdrop? Will Tesla beat quarterly earnings? Number one search person on Google this year, and all of these kinds of outcomes. Each one of these outcomes follows this kind of a framework where they have a temporal boundary when, they have a resolution timing of a deadline, they have a spatial boundary, they have a data source, they have a calculation method, they have a threshold with a significance level, and all of this points towards an outcome, either a yes or a no or a possible outcome. Now, it is absolutely a prediction gambling, so there is a chance for either financial gain or a financial loss. So I will not be partaking for your financial gain or financial loss just by being part of this. Now, the number one search person on Google this year, you could influence all of this just by pumping up different kinds of Google searches, right? You can utilize different kinds of SQL injections, search engine optimization, just so that you can bet on any one of these and increase their number, because we are still in October. So that means there's still a chance for this to be resolved by December 31st. And we can see the different kinds of resolution documents over here, right? The market will resolve according to the individual number one, right? By the official search list in for 2025, published on Google's year in search. So the authoritative location is trends with Google year in search. So this is the authoritative source, which brings us back to the temporal and spatial boundary, where data source is the trends with Google. So what else is provided over here? This market may resolve as soon as the official list is released for the specified time frame. If the Google if none of the listed options is ranked number one in the respective list, or if Google does not release the year 2025 in search by March 31st 2026, this market will resolve to other. So what is the resolver? There is a resolver. You can propose a resolution, you can do a lot of things with Polymarket. That's a lot of tools related to Polymarket. With Kalshi, it's a little bit different. You can view the rules. It's just a PDF document. We went over this PDF document in the earlier episode, and if you want to check it out, you can watch the earlier episode. It doesn't take too much of a long episode to do that. So that's what happens whenever you have an event trigger. You have a core analysis framework within our system that is triggered. But then whenever you have an event trigger, there's only other thing that is executed as well. What is the market probability? Market probability is the thing that you see over here. If it's a 53% probability, it's going to go towards 53. If it's a less of a probability, let's say 51% probability, it's going to go up to 46 or 41, 37, whatever probability the thing is at. In our example right now, the probability of a yes means 25 cents. So whenever you put in 25 cents, if you win, you get a dollar. That means your probability is at 0.25. That's why it's at probability of 25 cents. So that means the total value of the market is either a 1 or a 0. So if you put in 25 cents and you get a resolution yes, and that's what you put your money in, you get 1 and you get no. If you did the other way, you get 0. And the resolution timing and the deadline defines how many times this loop operates. So what this does is, beyond the time, where let's say up until Google's search or EU's climate thing, which is the 2030 goal, whenever it's published by the EU, up until the time that this is resolved to a yes or a no, this loop is iterating, and that's why we see this graph, right? So how does this loop iterate? It goes to external factors such as news releases, policy announcement, economic data, and market sentiment. So what that means? So market sentiment means the number of people that are holding up into yeses and no. So let's see. The turnover volume for this is $1,129. So there are people that are investing into this. So this market sentiment is driven by this. The economic data is the data that shows us the amount of carbon emissions that is going to happen in the EU. So the greenhouse gas emissions needs to be by 55% or lower. So uh, the emission needs to be 55% or the emission needs to be even lower than that. That means you cut the greenhouse gas emission by, let's say, 60%, you're still better. But if you cut it by 52%, then it's not going to come your way if you said yes in this. But if you said no, then you have a better chance. So either you can say yes or no. We know about all of this. So market sentiment and economic data is the one that will be able to provide us. What if the policy announcement support a kind of a policy that goes into effect in making this outcome of a 55% true, correct? So what are you going to do then? So what you're going to do is you're going to get this loop. It will change because of this external factor. What if the policy becomes more favorable from the EU in getting to this resolution? That means you're going to have a trading volume increase, and the probability of this going to 70, 75, right? So that's how this probability is impacted by the external factor, news releases and policy announcement. So let's say while this loop is going on, there is different kinds of trigger point logics that we can see from our core analysis framework that flows into this trigger point logic and comes over here in external factors. First of all is the identify external event. Whenever you trigger point logic says identify external event, you got to look into the external factor. Then there is analyze impact on market. You look at the market sentiment. You calculate the probability shift, and whenever you calculate the probability shift, this whole loop is executed, right? So you track price movement, this whole loop is executed. And when you do no trading, it doesn't go towards here. Let's say even without you trading or me trading, there is a probability shift that happens based on external triggers, right? So what is the use case for us scientists based on this, right? So I'm going to put a text over here and then say use case analysis for scientists. So whenever we put this over here, so what are the use cases? First of all, we can use this for carbon credit pricing. So how does market data help carbon credit pricing, right? There is an event that says the event is the EU meets its 2030 goals. Okay, there's a policy change. So the policy change dictates if it's going above or less than 55% compared to the 1990 level, correct? Now what we need to do is understand the market impact. Okay, the market impact for this would be this percentage going up or this percentage going down, or vice versa. So that means whenever this happens, what it does is it impacts the carbon credit pricing, because whenever you have this number going up, that means the policy is going up. That means the carbon credit is the exact opposite of this market. And you must be asking why. And I'll do a simple supply and demand curve over here. Okay, so um, let us draw a line. Okay, I want to draw a line. Uh, so we want to draw a line. Why do we want to draw a line? I want to draw a graph, correct? So let's make it a little bit more sensible. We make a graph inside of a square. So if you want to learn how to do all of this, you know, okay, so whenever we want to draw a line, what we do is we come over here, and I would just want to probably draw a black pencil, right? Right, okay. So we want to draw a black pencil. Okay, we want to do a line. Okay, so what we want to do is draw a line. We want to draw a line. We want to draw a graph that represents everything else. Correct, correct, correct. Okay, so a line. Okay, so a line and a horizontal line, correct? Okay, I don't want to do that this way so that it doesn't confuse you. So what we want to do is copy this, right? Copy this, and we do this. Okay, we sort of made a graph. Okay, so what we want to do now is do this, and I'm gonna tell you a graph, right? So we have this Kalshi market, this Kalshi market. So what we aim to do. Okay, so this is taking too much of a time, and I just want. Okay, so what we have over here is a Kalshi market, and what we have over here is the carbon credit pricing, right? Okay, so a really smart person would be able to tell me is this Kalshi market and this has a inverse relation, because whenever this market, okay, so if the Kalshi market says the EU, we can take this or we can take any of this, right? For example, so we have the Kalshi market over here. I was just gonna do this. Wow. So the carbon credit pricing market, and so I'm gonna give you this. Okay. So the idea is, so whenever you have a Kalshi market, right? If the Kalshi market's going up, the carbon credit pricing market needs to go down. It needs to have an inverse relation. So this graph is never linear. It's going towards sort of like a direction up, right? So this graph would be able to tell us the this be better, because you can treat the carbon pricing market as a dependent variable. So this becomes more of a dependent variable. So this becomes more of a dependent variable, right? See, you got to figure out how to do science, and you got to figure out all the keys and notations based on that. So this carbon credit market becomes a dependent variable, such as the Kalshi market becomes a independent variable. So what by definition is, this variable is not, we take this for an example because we can always plot a graph for this, right? If this graph is at a positive, that means what we need to do is the Kalshi market yes graph would be inversely related to this, right? So, and since this is a dependent value here, the Kalshi market no would resolve for a no versus yes, right? So you can draw two diagrams based on this. If you draw this, if you take this particular diagram, the inverse of this is true for the carbon credit market, and the um, uh, this can only reach up to this the market over here. You can see 60%, right? So this can only get to 100%. There's only the graph goes from 0 to 100. So this only flows like that, right? So if you plotted a no, for example, then you what you can see is, let's see the order book, right? So the order book right now, the volume is, the number of contract is, total is 2,300 and 237.3 thousand, right? So the order book is up to here, right? So whenever you see the trade no and then trade yes graph, right? Whatever you can see, this graph right here, this is the yes graph. So whenever you see this Calshi market versus covered credit pricing, this graph, whatever it shows in terms of a yes graph, would be our indicator that would say, okay, the Kalshi graph is yes. But if you took the no graph, which is the exact inverse of this graph, that would give us sort of a carbon credit pricing mechanism. That's the analysis I'm particularly doing, right? So how does this price carbon credit? Because if if the EU government is reaching this goal, then what I do is I take the no graph and then I take that into pricing it. And why am I using this way to price it? Because I have a um, scientific methodology startup, right? I take up all these carbon credits, package it from countries like Nepal and all these countries that you see here in our ecosystem. So all these seven countries, eight countries, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. All these seven countries that we see. So for example, Nepal, I package these carbon credits from these countries and I price them at a certain point, and then I try to bring machines that will try to curb climate change in these countries, such as um, uh, flood protection machines, drones, environmental sensors, all the types of machines. And what are the types of projects that we do? The types of projects that we do are land-based projects and project-based activities. This is a platform that I built. And to make the carbon credit pricing, we need a graph for this. And this graph actually helps me out in terms of figuring out how to do the carbon credit pricing. And the second thing that I can do is to um, figure out the COP 30 impact or the COP XYZ impact, right? So we can say COP 30 or COP XX, right? Every year there's a new kind of a COP happening. This year it's happening in Brazil, Belém. So how will prediction market shape climate policy decisions? You get market signals and you get policy insights. So I'll be tracking while the COP is happening, how does this market react? Because there is going to be a trade in terms of a yes or a no with the way the new kinds of policies are issued in the COP, right? So the way that the EU is going to do announcements with its policies, how it's going to react, is the graph that is going to be made. So these are the two kinds of use cases that I see in terms of at least climate data, and that's how we take the prediction market and take it into a scientific measurement. Because I'll give you an example, right? So we go up to here, right? We calculate the number of carbon projects that we can do, and then let's say we do carbon price estimator, right? So we can do this, right? Current EU ETS price is at 69.22, and there is a negative 31%. We can calculate this total carbon cost, and we can do all of this. But to price it particularly well, we need to be able to understand that there is efficiency measures, cost comparisons, there is policy that actually helps, there's price trends analysis that the EU ETS and California has. But in our condition, we are only doing EU ETS, right? Correct? So that's what we do. There is carbon cost optimizer in terms of 0 to 6 months, switch, renewable energy switch, energy efficiency. All these conversations, all these ideas, all it boils down to is the policies, right? So there's market sentiment and news, and for all of this, there is no particular markets that we can actually use that gives us like a perfect signal for us. And the one that I found that is the most easiest to understand is this: it's a yes or a no. And that gives me an idea, all right, if there is a higher chance of a yes, if the EU government is meeting yes, that means most of the businesses in the EU government, this is the resolution I can get. This is the idea that I can understand is I'll draw a graph for you, and this makes it easy. All right. So if uh, businesses reach their climate goal with EU by credits. Absolutely, yes. There's a higher chance for them to do that. And what does this mean? Is what does yes mean? Yes means that pom, 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 pom. What yes results mean? They will buy less carbon credits. That means, what does that mean? And I'll take you to the type of decisions that we need to make. They will buy more carbon credits, right? Now, another thing that they'll buy less carbon credits, that means increase the quality, increase the quality of carbon credits, and decrease the quantity. So for me, the resolution I get is, if businesses reach their goal with EU, they will buy less carbon credits. Yes, they will buy. If this will happen, it will be yes. They'll buy less carbon credits. That becomes absolute. Increase. I have to increase the quality and decrease the quantity. Right. That means supply and demand. Right. Supply and demand. Okay. So if that's the case, if businesses reach they will buy less carbon credits. No, they will buy more carbon credits. In this case, what I can do is I can afford to. What can I afford to do? What can I afford to do? Sell more carbon credits, right? So which graph do I need to look for in this particular case? Need to see the no graph of the Kalshi market. The no probability is better for my outcome. Now, finally, I get to a really critical point. So, one of the things I've talked about is the percentage and probabilities. But then the trade volume also helps me out, right? So, what I do with the trade volume is very, very simple. So, let's look at the order book. Let's see the trade volume. So, if people are trading on this, right? Cents on the dollar, and there is the trade volume. Now what I can do is with this idea, right? What I plan to do with all of this is, let me make a bracket over here. It makes it very easy. So what I do with this is sort of extend this bracket over here. This whole bracket will be able to tell me if um, what this will be able to tell me is the trade volume provides an analysis on carbon credit trade volume indicators. So what I've noticed, okay, I'll tell you this. So let's say you are a business in EU and you knew that businesses all around you are not going to meet their climate targets and you're in 2029, but you would have to buy carbon credits and sell it. So what is a really good hedge that you can do? This market. Because if you have to pay the CO2 credits, that is $100 per ton, at least in 2025, if you miss your targets, then where are you going to get the money? Right here. Right here. You're going to get your money right here. That's what you do. But I'm telling you not to trade volumes over here, and that's what you do. So this is a hedge against there's a top tip. This particular market is a hedge against the carbon credits payment for European businesses. Okay, so you can take this as an indicator and then you can take it to the bank, right? So yeah, that gives me the resolution for today's episode number 2. I hope you understood a little bit more than you were able to understand in the earlier episode, and how we were able to do analysis in terms of scientific perspective on all of this. And with that, we're at the end of the episode, and I hope to see you in future episodes, and we talk about a lot more things than we just did today. And we are going to continue on this particular model and understand how we look at it in terms of scientific perspective. Now, with the scientific perspective, you don't know what road it's going to take, but we try to do this in terms of drawing flows and draw in terms of drawing diagrams so that you can understand what's going inside this noggin over here from a scientific perspective. There is no way we can explain how it goes in real terms, but there is a perspective with which we can actually take this data and then modify it for your particular use. So we just learned that there is a way to take these prediction markets and then make it into a hedge into a real world market, which is the carbon credit market. I'm just going to show you to how big the carbon credit exchange is. All right, let's see the number of volumes over here. Even this, I would suggest nobody to like really invest based on like my thing over here. Offsetting exchange for spot prices, voluntary carbon trading, and all of this is you can log in, open CTS account, and start doing this. I think +44 means they're based around from the UK. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode, and say goodbye with a sip of coffee. Thank you.